Hello, bonjour. Jan here. I just today want to talk about Christmas. My tree's up, and because I'm talking about Christmas, I thought I had to wear a silly hat. So today I'm going to be comparing French Christmas to English Christmas. A few people have asked me, well, in fact, I think every year at least one English person asks me, what's it like in France and at Christmas? I mean, I think we've all got similar traditions, but generally I would say Christmas is quieter. I don't know if that's because we're in the countryside as opposed to where we used to live in a town, but yeah, I would say it's quieter. So everything I say is what I've researched, and a lot of it is what I've, just to make sure I haven't read wrong or something, I've just compared, not compared, I've asked our French neighbours, and especially things that I thought surely not, you know, and they confirmed, and I was surprised. But and obviously there's going to be, I'm talking about food and things, and going to be showing pictures of the things I'm talking about, and obviously it's going to involve meat and things, and French aren't very, even now, still not, they're getting much better regarding vegetarians, but and there is even restaurants now opening, but it's still not to the stat like it would be in the UK or maybe America or somewhere, that they just seem to be with it now. They just seem to be bringing more and more vegetarian food into the shops and things. But so what I'm doing is traditional things. It's not necessarily what some of them do now. First off, the French have an advent calendar, just as we do in the UK, and I think possibly everybody does in America and that as well, which would be, I mean, the traditional was to have little windows to open each day, wasn't it? But now they do the ones with the chocolates in and things like that, and so they do the same thing here. In the countryside here, I've said it, I think I've said it a few times, they still live quite simply. I think if we was in a town, things might be slightly different. That's what I'm saying. This is all from what I've researched, and from our perspective, what we've experienced for Christmas since living here in the French countryside. Next would be traditionally Mass is held, but because of COVID that hasn't happened the last few years, it's all been a bit awkward. I haven't heard of anything happening this year. Now, December 24, December 24 is December 24th. Traditionally, Mass is held on Christmas Eve. And Christmas Eve in French is La Réveillon. And at midnight or a few hours before, people go to church or a cathedral, if you're in a big town with a cathedral, to sing hymns and pray, exactly what you'd expect. And Mass is also held in the UK. Sometimes that's the only time some people go to church, because it's that romanticism of going to church. It's traditional for Christmas, and what better to come out of the church after the service and it's snowing. I mean, just ideal, isn't it? It's like a classic Christmas movie. But also, in my research, found that apparently a lot of French are wishing that now they could go to Mass, as it were, during Christmas Day, the next day, and I can only assume that's because obviously going to Mass at midnight is quite late, and maybe it's a bit too much, especially when you know, for the children. Now, December 24th, which is Christmas Eve in the UK as well, and it's not the same tradition. I mean, in the UK, Christmas Eve here is what you'd call Christmas Day, because that is when they have their big feast, if you like, their meal, which can go on for 6 hours or more. So excuse, because I'm going to have to refer to my notes, because obviously I'm going to forget something otherwise. Yeah, so they do what we would do in the UK on the 25th. They do that on the 24th, which, as far as I can make out, most of it all happens in the evening. And I think, whereas UK, it's sort of make a long day of it. And obviously then we have Boxing Day as well. Boxing Day doesn't exist here. Everything's back to normal, and if there's work, they're back to work on the 26th. But going back to the meal, it's the time that they will eat luxuriously. And again, I think for those that can afford it in the UK, it's very similar. We do like to push the boat out and have some really extravagant food and things. Not everybody can afford to do that, and sometimes I can't help but think it is wasteful, and you don't always need to have so much. It's just a sheer greed, isn't it, really? But we'll do it. It's just because that's the way it's always been. I mean, and their meal, they see things, they'll have like salmon and oysters and meats and all of these things they offer to their guests because they see that as offering their guests the best. They don't tend to think too much about the vegetables, as I said before. They always offer much less vegetables than you're going to have fish or meat, and because it's a celebration time, so they see that you're going to, push the boat out. As I say, have your meat, your salmon, and everything. And we've realised this over the years. If we have any meal during the day, whether it be a celebration or whatever, if we have a meal at the neighbours, they like to present you with meat. They like to serve you meat, or they'll serve you fish, to the point that sometimes the vegetables are not forgotten. They just don't think about it in the same way. They feel that if they all offer you vegetables, you'll see them as poor, that they haven't got the money to be able to give you meat and fish. And I think it's quite sad, really, because obviously we have a good mixture of it, and we love our vegetables. We have had meals before, and it's been some meat, a load of meat, and then almost as an afterthought, they'll put a bowl of chips out or crisps. So that was a bit of a takeabout. I mean, we're used to it all now, but it was a bit strange at first. But I mean, it's brilliant. It's just fantastic to experience things in a different, these things differently. Our neighbours, once they realise that we celebrate Christmas Day on the 25th, they were fascinated, absolutely fascinated. But they seem to be fascinated by everything we do. And I think it goes a bit both ways, but they're always so curious. They love being friends with us and vice versa, because we can experience things differently, and they like to find out how we do things, and in awe very often of, really, wow, it's bizarre. Some of the things I'm going to tell you, that you can see why we were shocked, and they were shocked that we were shocked. It's all a bit like that. The Christmas table will be laid out very elegantly. Again, the Christmas with UK, if they can afford to do it, and some people that's going to be the time each year they want to really lay the table out, serviettes, candelabras, everything. I have to say, over the years I did that less and less, and here, because it's just me and Duncan, we end up sadly with just a tray on our laps. And apparently they'll have 3 candlesticks on the table, or three candles. It'd be like 3 candles and a candelabra, or three candlesticks. And this apparently is to represent the Trinity. So that's one thing I never knew about. And having looked through a lot of the pictures of traditional Christmas layouts, there very often is 3 candles. And another thing that made me smile was an interesting tradition is to knot the end of the tablecloth. And apparently that's to stop the devil from getting, or to stop him getting under the table. I don't quite know how that stops the devil getting under the table, but that's their tradition. Now, the Christmas meal is simply called La Veille de Noël, and traditionally it consists of, I'm going to give you like a traditional layout now of what they have, and I'm going to be showing some pictures. Smoked salmon and oysters with bran bread and butter. Sounds lovely. Foie gras. Now, this is quite controversial. It'll be goose or duck foie gras. A goose. Capon or a turkey with chestnut stuffing. So servings of vegetables, but these are generally going to be green beans cooked with garlic, butter and herbs. Now, and sautéed potatoes. Now I'm salivating at the thought of that, because I love green beans and garlic. And so, yeah, most of the pictures I looked at for Christmas vegetables, is what come up. Green beans cooked in garlic and butter. Then you go on to a Yule Log. I think most of you know what a Yule Log is, and it's bûche de Noël. And that's presented on the table and enjoyed. For those of you that don't know, a Yule Log is a rolled sponge cake with cream filling, and it's usually chocolate sponge. It might have cream filling, it might have chocolate filling, whatever. And then it's a chocolate buttercream spread all around it, and then you'll run a fork or something along it to make it look like a log, a wooden log. Again, I will show you a picture. Traditionally, the actual Yule log used to be placed underneath the bed, and that was for luck. And ironically, it was to protect from threats of lightning and fire. And in Provence, it's a tradition that the family cut down a tree, usually a fruit tree, and then it's cut into smaller logs, and a log is burnt each night until the 12th night. If there's any left after the 12th night, it's kept safe in the house or somewhere until next Christmas to protect them still from lightning. But having looked at it and researched it, I found that's a tradition in quite a lot of countries. And I didn't know the tradition behind that, did you? Then you go on to Les 13 Desserts, and that's 13 desserts. And this is to symbolise Christ and the 12 apostles and the Last Supper. And it consists of fruits and nuts and sweets and figs and a dish called pompe à l'huile, which is sweet olive oil brioche. Again, I can show you a picture of that. And apparently everybody must taste each of the desserts, again, for luck in the upcoming year. Sounds good to me, any excuse. They'll always serve good wine, and it'll be served alongside, champagne is essential. But generally you'll have a different wine for each course. And I think it's the same on most what you'd call formal occasions. We've been with our neighbours before now, and they've come out a wine for starter, wine for the main, one for the cheese, one for the dessert. That's just the way they do things. As I say, when we have our meal on Saint Sylvestre, which is New Year's Eve, we get a different. Let's say we get different wine with each course there. What happens in our village a few weeks before New Year's Eve, a menu is produced from the local restaurant, and we choose from, I think it's 2 or 3 set menus, and that usually has 5 or 6 courses, depending on which one you choose, and we decide on what we're going to have. Then we order it around the middle of December, and then we go to the restaurant on Saint Sylvestre and we collect our meals. Now this is done because I think so that a hotel can have their New Year's Eve evening, and they haven't got to run the restaurant. So you go there, you collect your menu. Each dish has instructions on how to cook it or warm it or whatever. So you can all cook and eat together. I have to say, it's generally here, it's the women that go to collect it and the women that prepare it and cook it. So they can be a little bit chauvinistic here, but that's just the way they do things. Elsewhere in the world, maybe, or not many countries. But I don't know. I don't live everywhere, do I? But I do think in the UK now there's a lot of men that do the cooking. So I do see the men helping here, but it generally is to serve the drinks and things. And Duncan doesn't do it, but that's not because he's chauvinistic. He just doesn't know how to cook, so he will always be the one serving the drinks. But doing it that way, getting it from the restaurant, it does save you having to cook right from scratch. You just literally just putting it in the oven and warming it, and it's restaurant quality. On top of all this, before you even have your meal, apéros are served. So we, more often than not, will prepare mini toasts, as they say, like the little blinis or little toasts, and they'll have caviar on, or tuna, and just all different toppings, and there'll be a huge amount of those, just sort of one bite things, mise-bouche as they call them, and you have that alongside with your whiskey or your pastis or something like that. And this is like hours leading up to, you might just be sitting talking, you might play a game or something leading up to the meal. So much so it goes on for so long you're not eating till, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and it's quite late. And I must admit, by then usually I've almost got past it. I don't really want to eat it then, but this is how they do it. So we obviously we do it that way. Respect, that's the way they do things. We always have a fantastic night, and we all struggle, that's to say, with that eating, but also it feels very different. Come midnight, they're not anticipating 12 o'clock like we would be. They're just carrying on talking and everything. I mean, the first year we were with them and looking around waiting for someone to acknowledge that it was 12 o'clock, and they didn't. And then I just said, so midwee. And it's like, oh, okay. So then I went round and sort of give a kiss, Happy New Year and everything. And it's really bizarre. I think they've got sort of got used to it a bit more now. So because we know them more now, we'll be doing the countdown. They say they're not even really watching the clock. I mean, like, we would have Big Ben on in the background or something in UK, or you'd have the radio on where they're doing the countdown, but no, they don't seem to do that. It is bizarre. They want to do all the meal and everything, but they're more into the being together and celebrating like that, but they don't necessarily think about bringing the new year in. So yeah, it's strange. Another thing that gets served around Christmas time is mulled wine. Now, I don't know if you know what mulled wine is, but it's hot red wine containing spices. It's mainly served in bars and markets here. You don't really find people serving it to their guests in houses. The Christmas trees are erected and decorated in time for Christmas Eve, which is, again, I think there's probably quite a lot of people that don't put it up to Christmas Eve, but I would say the majority of people are chomping at the bit to get their tree up in October or something. Mine's up now, and I always used to put mine up by the 1st of December because that's when my daughter's birthday's on the 9th of December, and I always felt I wanted to get the tree up in time for her birthday. The way they see it obviously here is to get it, as long as the tree's up and decorated, in time for Père Noël or Santa Claus, Father Christmas. French children either do or did apparently put their shoes out in front of the fireplace or near to it, whereas we would see hanging your stockings up maybe for Christmas, but they put shoes out in front of the fire so that Père Noël can find them and fill them with gifts and treats. Generally, obviously, only gifts that will fit, logically, will only fit inside the shoes. I mean, can you imagine? Now, with children, children in the UK, I don't think they would be putting up with that. They'd be trying to stretch their feet so they could get bigger shoes. But I dare say that that's not the only present they get. They obviously get other presents, but it's a tradition to put the shoes out in front of the fire. And I did last year watch a Dutchman was talking about it being a tradition in his country, and they did it, and it was quite sweet to watch. So another tradition that surprised me was, as well as Father Christmas or Père Noël, he has a helper. I mean, where we'd always, our tradition to see Santa's helper is like the little elves and things, isn't it? Whereas here they have a Père Fouettard, or Père Fouettard, and it translates as Father Spanker. He decides if a child's been good or not Santa. He does the spanking to the children that have not been good. So now these traditions, I wasn't sure if this was still the case, but having asked my neighbours, they say it is, and they were surprised that we didn't know, of course. Same as I asked them about the shoes in front of the fire, and they said, yep. So in this day and age, I'm surprised. I know in the UK they definitely would not be allowing a Father Spanker, but yeah, that is the tradition. And also, bizarrely, Père Fouettard is actually black-skinned. Why this is, I will never know. If you look on Google, you'll look at lots of pictures and you'll see Père Fouettard or Father Spanker. If they haven't actually got a black person, they have blacked a person up. They'll have black makeup on to make sure that tradition carries on. So it's bizarre, eh? So yeah, so that he makes the decisions here, not Father Christmas. There you go. Discovered in my research is Papiotts, and that's if you say it as it is, it's Papiotts. These are all basically a sweet that's put out in a bowl and wrapped in sparkly paper with fringed ends. Now, and then inside that there would be like a little note written inside. And I can't say up until now, knowing this, I haven't really noticed them in the shops, because you see so many Christmas sweets around. They do like the chocolate here, that I didn't register what they were. But this year I bought some, so I'm dying to try these. And there's apparently 4 different flavours in there. And yes, I think it's another tradition we can actually do here in our house. And this tradition apparently was created in Lyon at the start of the 18th century, and it was always seen as an essential part of the tradition in Christmas. I've heard about these now, and to say, I didn't have any idea what they were. They've also discovered that Tom Smith, I don't know if everybody knows, I know in the UK they know, that Tom Smith developed the traditional Christmas cracker, which is a tradition in England, after seeing the Papiotts. And he started to sell them with little notes inside, and later on his son added the paper crowns and small gifts. Now, when I showed my tree, I can show you here. Now, this is what you would call a traditional English cracker, but this is a miniature one for the tree. But the normal crackers, actually, I might have one. I'll just go and find one. So this is more of a traditional English cracker. And what you would do, you pull this, and then there's a snap inside, like a paper there, which snaps and makes a bang. I mean, my brother, he's special needs, but you give him a cracker and he will not crack it. It scares the life out of him, and I think it's the case with some children. But yeah, that's what it is. And inside there, you get a paper crown hat, and you'll get a little gift, and then there'll be a joke inside. We did put them out. We took them over to the French one, because you can't buy them here. You've got to buy them in the UK. And we took crackers just to, again, and they loved it again. It was an English tradition. But then we had to translate the jokes. It didn't quite work. But they loved it. They put the hat on, and they just loved to do it. Apparently the big, as to say, they never took off in France, but I think that's quite likely because they see the little Papiotts is their tradition. Why would they change it? That's their tradition. Now, another thing that's a tradition in France is to also hang up mistletoe, which is called gui, or is it gis? It might be gis. Same as it's done in the UK. The only difference here is they just hang it up for luck. In the UK, they hang it up and it's a good excuse to kiss someone. Another tradition, I think, again, is the same the world over. Nativity scenes. They're called Santons de Noël here, or creches. Again, a Catholic tradition. And Santons means saints. Now, scenes of saints are seen, set up, and lots of different figures can be bought from all over the place. And you can buy, if you live near Aix-Provence, every year they bring out new saints and new figures that you can add to your creches. They also have a crèche vivante, basically a live nativity, and they have these little shows and scenes around the country, and especially popular apparently in the south of France. I yet haven't seen a nativity scene local to here, so maybe it is more south, but I expected on our first visit to the church, when we knew the children were going to be there, we thought that's what it was going to be, but it wasn't. It was literally just children playing their instruments and that in their little choir and things like that. Now, January 6th is another tradition here. Now, in the UK, the tradition is obviously that you have to have your decorations down by the 6th, which is your 12th night. Here, 6th of January, or Janvier, is La Fête du Roi. So basically It's the tradition of the arrival of the three kings. Roi, it's always a hard one to say, is kings. On this day, it's a tradition to get together, and they have champagne, and they eat a choice of 3 cakes. One is galette de roi, and this is a layered puff pastry cake with frangipan inside, which is almond flavour, or pureed apple. Another one they have is sable galette, which is a sweet crust pastry, and that's and brioche cake with candied fruits and sugar. Now, that particular one, sable galette, I've not yet tried, but I have the galette we can always buy, and every time you go to the supermarkets straight after Christmas, they're all there. But so I must try that other one. You can usually spot them straight away, the galettes, galette noir, because they're sold in paper bags, and usually there'll be a cardboard gold crown sitting on top of the bag. Now the crown goes to the person who gets the slice that actually has a small figurine inside it, and they're usually little ceramic religious figures, or like as years have gone on, they've had Disney figures, things like that inside. And people do collect these. When you go to the big greniers, as in like boot fairs, flea markets, you'll see some people just collect thousands of them, and they'll be trying to sell their doubles or whatever. This tradition would never happen in the UK now, with health and safety the way it is, in case somebody might choke on it. Whereas, because French are very much, they'd see that as your own fault. You know, if you were stupid enough to swallow a little figurine, which I must admit you'd think you'd notice it. The more worrisome bit is you chomp on it and break your tooth. But that's the way it is here. So everybody's on edge, just not really on edge, but they're prepared, and they're sort of feeling around in the mouth, waiting to see who's got it. I mean, and because of the size they are, quite often if you give them a slice, you can probably see the figure before you've even bitten into it. And another tradition is that, or the tradition I should say, is that a child sits underneath, the youngest member of the family sits under the table, and they call out names, or the names of the next person to get a slice. So it's all done, I suppose you'd call it fairly, because he doesn't know, or they don't know which slice has got the figurine in it. So they call out a name and it's served to them. And it's quite funny because the youngest member of the family might be an adult still, and you've got an adult. I've got pictures of adults sat under the table calling out, so it's quite a comical thing. I expect babies would be let off, so it'd have to be the ones capable of doing that. The French, they don't seem to have many traditional Christmas carols. They usually sing hymns in church instead, but they have translated and used many non-religious Christmas carols or songs from other countries, including Germany and UK. And for example, like Jingle Bells is one. They call that Vive le Vent, which is Long Live the Wind, or Silent Night, which is Douce Nuit, Sweet Night. Then you've got O Christmas Tree, which is Mon Beau Sapin, which is My Christmas Tree, and Auld Lang Syne. Now, I don't know if that's just a UK and Scottish thing. Normally, I'm not sure if it's in any other country, but they've adopted that. It translates as "it's only a goodbye," so it's quite nice, really. And also the French say Joyeux Noël or Bon Noël as for Happy Christmas. And also you have to remember to never say Bonne Année, because if you say it to anybody here before midnight of San Silvestre, it's seen as bad luck. Now, I know I have said that every year for before midnight for years, and I've not been frowned upon or told off, but now I know I'll make sure I don't say it before midnight, make sure it's said on New Year's Day, if not at midnight. I mean, I've not been deported yet. So, yeah, I mean, apparently Noël it's abbreviated from Les Bonnes Nouvelles, which is good news. So over time, it's just got shorter and shorter. That's all about the French Christmas, and I think you can tell that there's not an awful lot of different traditions, but I say it's the quietness that I notice more than anything. It's like at midnight, like I say, they don't, on New Year's Eve, they don't go out tooting their horns and things like that at midnight, which we've been used to in the UK. It's just like deadly silent. I mean, there might be a little bit of cheers and Santé with their champagne or whatever in the house, but you just don't see anything happening. I'm not even sure if I've ever seen fireworks. Actually, when they love their fireworks, I might be wrong, but I'm not sure I've seen fireworks on New Year's Eve. So I think that's it about the traditions, and hopefully you enjoyed it. It's a bit longer than some of my videos. I've been trying to put up shorter ones recently, but it's hard to cut this sort of video down. So hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you can tell me in the comments if there's any of those traditions that you do or that you do differently. Yeah, I mean, I know when you talk about the food, I mean, I suppose our Christmas dinner is much the same. It's just we set it all out differently. I mean, it's one thing the French always say. They always say assiette anglaise, because if they do a plate and it's got more than just meat on it, it's seen as an English plate. Because we put the meat on, the potatoes on, and any vegetables are all on one plate, whereas they would serve it over a few courses. So, and in some ways, I have to say, they eat in a much healthier way than we do. So, I do keep saying we should try and adopt their ways of eating sometimes. Same as they eat their main heavier meal for lunchtime, but it's just not always possible. I don't know how they do it, because weekends they can do it. But generally the evenings are something like a salad or a soup. They don't have a heavy meal in the evenings, and they do seem to be able to stay a little bit healthier. So, as I say, hopefully you enjoyed it, and I shall see you in the next video. And if you're seeing this around Christmas time, Merry Christmas. And if you missed it at Christmas, never mind. Bonne année. Au revoir.